everyone. This week in Level F, we're going to be going over lessons 141 through 144. You will need worksheets 122 through 125, the drawing board, the T-square, the 30-60-90 triangle, and the 45-45-90 triangle, roll of tape, the 4-in-1 ruler, and the goniometer. Lesson 141 reviews how to draw lines using the triangles. So go ahead and ask the warm-up questions and then introduce the use of the triangle with the T-square. Let's take a look at that.
Okay, so remember that we want to use the T-square to line up with one of the horizontal lines on the paper. This looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and put a piece of tape in each of the top corners. And then it says use your drawing tools to draw all the lines. So for the first one, draw the slats for the fence. Now you could use either triangle for this. I have the 45-45 angle triangle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the T-square a little bit below this line. So right about here feels comfortable to me. And then I'm going to line up the edge of the triangle with the first dot. And remember, you do it a little bit off so that the thickness of the pencil actually fits in and draws the line where you want it to be. Now notice how I held the T-square with my left hand. This is for a right-handed person. T-square with my left hand, triangle with my right. And then I'm going to take over and I'm going to use my left hand to hold both of them while I draw my line. Once again, I will line it up a little bit to the right of the dot. And draw my lines. Now, I'm not going to complete this. That's something that your student can do, no problem. Let's look at the next one. It says complete the octagon. So here I have 2 horizontal lines to complete and 2 vertical lines. So I'm going to use the T-square and triangle, holding it with my left hand and making sure that the T-square is hugging the board and that the triangle is hugging the T-square. All right, now it says to draw both diagonals in the rhombuses. So we can easily do that. There's one diagonal. Here's the other. And now I need to use my straight edge from the triangle to draw the vertical diagonals. See how this was a little bit to the left? Now, if I had a pencil, I would erase it. But since I'm using a marker, I'll just scooch over and make the line a little bit thicker. You definitely want your students to use a pencil. I'm just doing this so that you can see it. Oops, see there, I made that mistake again. Okay, there we go. All right, now for the octagon, it says in the octagon, draw the diagonals with your drawing tools. So for this one, you will use a 45-degree angle triangle. You can easily make the horizontal lines with the T-square, connecting all of these vertices. And then you use the straight edge from the triangle. I'll keep it over a little bit farther to the right so that I line it up properly. And now I need to use this leg of the triangle to connect these vertices. Here, flip the triangle over and do it again. We have some straight vertical lines to do. Okay, and that looks like it's, oops, nope, I have to do these angles here. Those diagonals. Let's see, there would be Another one here. Here and down here. Okay, that looks done. And I used the 45-degree angle triangle for that one. For the next one, we are drawing diagonals in a hexagon versus the octagon. And we have to use the 30-60 triangle to do that. So I'll go ahead and just show you some of those lines. I won't do the whole thing, even though it's fun and I get carried away. That's how you would do that. Let's see, for here, you need to use the 30-degree angle side. And you would do that up here as well. And then you can flip it over. Okay, so you get the idea. I won't complete that, but you get the idea of how to do that. You can also do the vertical lines using the straight edge of the triangle as well, just like you did on the last one. One thing I did want to show you is that for me, I can easily determine which part of the triangle I need to use to draw which line. But for a beginner, that's not necessarily always clear. So what you can do is have them line the triangle up with the line that they're trying to recreate. So they can see, oh yes, this angle here lines up properly with that line. So I can use that to draw this line here. Now, they could also, for example, see on this smaller diagram that they would have to use the 60-degree angle to draw this line. And sure enough, you can draw this line like this. So they can always use these smaller diagrams to determine which part of the triangle they need to use in order to draw the line.
All right, so once that worksheet is finished, go ahead and ask the in conclusion question. Lesson 142 has a correction on the worksheet. So if your book was printed before April 18th, 2018, please follow the link in the description to the corrections page. In this lesson, your student will classify quadrilaterals. After the oral warm-up questions, you'll be asking questions that lead to discovery. If your student is not familiar with some of the words, for example, kite and rhombus, have them go ahead and fill in the words that they do know on the worksheet, and then go ahead and show them the pictures of the unfamiliar figures so that they have a picture in their head of what that word really means. When drawing the figures, your student may want to use the triangles and the drawing in the lesson book to figure out which triangles they need to use in order to draw the figure. So let's take a look at an example of that.
Okay, so let's say that your student didn't know what a kite looked like. They can use the triangle to see. Let's look at the 45 first. That's not the correct one, but I want you to see that. See how if they lined this up, you can even put a T-square here, but you can approximate just for this exercise here. This triangle would not give me any of these lines. However, the 30-60 triangle would. So if I use the 60-degree side here, I can draw that line, I can flip this over and draw this line, and then I can use the 30-degree angle to draw that line, flip it over, and draw this line. So let's go ahead and do that on a blank piece of paper. Okay, so to draw the kite, I have the 60-degree angle touching the T-square. My T-square is hugging the board, and I'm just going to draw a line. Now, your students will draw smaller ones because they need to fit it onto the worksheet, but just for the sake of demonstration, I'm going to do this. And remember, they're going to be using a pencil so they can erase anytime that they overshoot the line a little bit, which I guess I did pretty good, but it's okay if you're using a pencil to overshoot, it doesn't matter. So these two lines are congruent. They're the same length. And the definition of a kite is two pairs of adjacent equal sides. So this side is adjacent to this side. And I show that they're equal by putting a line, a tick mark. Now these two lines are also equal. And since they're not equal to these up here, I will use two parallel lines to show that these two are equal. So while the angles, all four angles are not equal, there are two adjacent, that means touching, lines that are congruent with each other. These two, and there is your kite.
So as I said, anytime that your student doesn't know what a figure should look like, it's perfectly acceptable to show them an example of it and have them use that smaller example to figure out which part of whatever triangle they're trying to use fits. Okay, so like I showed you how the 45-degree angle triangle would not work. And that's okay for them to try out whatever they have available. And then they'll see that, oh, okay, the 60-degree angle worked for two of the lines and the 30-degree angle worked for two of the lines. So it's good to have them test it out on the already existing figure, whether it was the rhombus or the kite or the parallelogram, and then go ahead and reproduce that. So once the worksheet is done, follow up with the discussion questions and then the in conclusion question. For lesson 143, we will learn how to scale a figure. So we can either scale it down from the existing size or scale it up. Ask the oral warm-up questions concerning fractions, and then let's take a look at problem number 1 on the worksheet.
Okay, so it says measure the sides of the prism in inches and multiply each dimension by 3/4 and draw the new prism. So, and we're going to start at this black dot. So I'm going to measure from this black dot up to here, and it's 1 inch. So if I multiply 3/4 by 1, I get 3/4. So this line needs to be 3/4 of an inch. Now, since your student is using a pencil, they can go ahead and draw the line however long they want and then measure it. However, I'm not going to use a pencil so that you can see it dark enough. So I have already marked where I want to stop. Now I can check and make sure. And sure enough, that's 3/4 of an inch. Okay, so I've already marked here that this is 1 inch. We know that this has 3/4 of an inch. This is 1.5 inches and this is 2 inches. So 3/4 times 2 inches is 1.5 inch. So I am going to put a little dot where I know I want my line to stop. And I'll do that in pencil. But I will draw the line in marker for you. Okay, and I can also line it up with this line in the existing box over here. Okay, so now I have a baseline and I'm going to eyeball it. I have a top line. I can then draw, I see how I overshot it a little bit. That's okay. So I'm going to draw the vertical line right here. Okay, so now I have this front box reduced to 3/4. Okay, so now I want to create these lines here. And the interesting thing about this problem is that you have to actually, this is the only time when the T-square should not be hugging the board. You flip it over so that it can slide freely, and you take your triangle and you line it up with this line here. See how that's not lined up? So I can just turn it. I keep the T-square and the triangle hugging each other, but I line the triangle up to the line that I want to copy, and then I can slide the triangle back and draw the line. Now remember, if you're drawing with a pencil, you don't have to mark where you're going first, but since I'm drawing with a marker, I do. I actually want to use this side because 1.5 reduced by 3/4, so times 3/4 is actually 1 1/8. So not 1 8/10, like this is 1 5/10, but 1 1/8. So here I have an inch. Here would be a quarter. So this line right here would be the 1/8 line. So I'll put a little pencil mark there. I will pull my triangle back just a tad so that I can account for the thickness of my marker. And I can draw to that dot. And I can do the same. Actually, I would like to draw this line first. That needs to be 3/4 of an inch. So remember, while I'm measuring it, your student will be drawing it first and then measuring. So I need it to be 3/4 of an inch, which is there. Okay. And now I can put my T-square back to normal and draw that line. And the reason why I like to draw that line is because then I have a target line for this one up here. It isn't essential, especially when you're using pencil. You can actually draw this line first. I just happen to like doing it this way since I'm measuring and not just drawing. Okay, so now we flip the T-square over again, line this triangle up with that baseline, this right-hand line here, and then slide up to get that same angle. So now we're going to go for this line back here. Remember, I still have the T-square upside down. I line up my triangle with these existing lines here, and then I just move over. I have already pre-marked where I want to go. Your student doesn't need to because they can always erase. So I just noticed that I actually overshot this line because I mismeasured. I measured 1 1/4 inches rather than 1 1/8. But before I drew this back line, I noticed that problem. So now I've corrected it and I can use my T-square to connect the proper lines. There we go. So other than that little blip right there, it's a pretty good representation of this one. And it's 3/4 of, or 3/4 the size of this one.
Okay, so once that worksheet is done, go ahead and ask the in conclusion questions. For lesson 144, we will draw a regular polygon in a circle, several of them actually. Go ahead and ask the oral warm-up questions and discuss what a radius is and how many degrees are in a circle. Let's go ahead and look at problems number 1 and 3.
Okay, so I have my worksheet taped onto the board. I just used these lines, these horizontal lines here, to help me line it up to make sure that I have it on straight. Now, I said I was going to show you the first and the third problem. The first one is to divide this circle into 3 angles. And we need to first draw the radii that have the same angle between each radius. Then we'll connect the ends of the radii and create a polygon. Okay, so my first thing that I want to do is I want to draw a straight line for the first radius. And what I can do, I think it's easier to just fold up the goniometer to use that straight edge. You could also use the triangle. Okay, so we're going to draw this first line. That's 1 radius. Then we want to know how many degrees there needs to be between the 2 lines. And the easiest way to find that is to say 360 divided by 3, because we know we want 3 angles, is 120. Now, the easiest way to see the number is to actually put your finger under it so that it kind of highlights the number. And so now I have my goniometer set up to 120 degrees. So I just put the dot right here where the 2 legs of the goniometer meet. And I'm just going to draw a tick mark. And remember, you want to move it just a little bit to account for the thickness of the pencil lead or the marker. So I do the same thing. I line up the dot with the center here and make sure that my line is lined up with this radius. And I will put, I'm going to move it just a tad, a little tick mark there. So now I should be able to draw these lines. And this one. It doesn't matter, you can use any straight edge, it doesn't have to be the goniometer. So now I've divided into 3 equal angles. And then the instructions say to connect the ends of the radii. So we do that here. And there. See how that's not perfect? See, this is the reason why you don't want to use a marker, but it will be easier for you to see. So I'm going to go back and see if I can fix that just a tad. Okay, there we go. So it's a little wonky, but with a pencil and erasing it, it'll look great. So I've just drawn an equilateral triangle inside this circle. Now I'm going to do the 5 angles because this one's a little bit more complicated. Okay, so this says 5 angles. So we just have to divide 360 by 5, which is 72. I already have my goniometer set up to 72. So I'm going to use my triangle as the straight edge to draw the first radius, because I don't want to have to mess with the goniometer moving. My eyes aren't as good as they used to be. So here's my first radius. And now I need to do 4 more. And they need to be 72 degrees apart. So here's my goniometer. I'm going to line it up with the center right here and with this line that I just drew. And I can draw, I'm going to do it a little bit down and a little bit to the left, draw a tick mark. And then I do it again, lining it up with the tick mark, and the center be a little bit off there to account for the thickness. Do another tick mark. Lining it up here with this tick mark and the center, draw another tick mark. Lining it up with this tick mark and the center, and I draw another tick mark. Now I can use any straight edge, I'll use the goniometer, to go ahead and draw these lines, connecting the center point with the tick mark on the edge. Okay, and then we connect the ends of the radii. And there we have created a pentagon inscribed inside that circle. So depending on your student, he or she may want to, before they start drawing, go through and write down what the angle needs to be, or they can do it after they're done with the drawing. It doesn't matter. So for 3 angles, it's 120 degrees, 4 is 90, 5 angles is 72. And we're just determining this by dividing 360 by however many angles we're putting in. 6 angles would be 60 degrees each. 7 angles would be 51.4. And 8 angles would be 45 degrees. So then your child goes ahead and just completes this worksheet, doing the last 4 here.
Okay, so once your child has completed the worksheet, go ahead and ask the in conclusion questions. And then that's all for this week. I hope to see you next time. Thanks so much for joining me. Bye-bye.